All right, next we're going to talk, I really believe the last topic we're going to talk about are sleep disorders. So a couple of things to cover for this one for you. Sleep disorders, we have a couple of different sleep disorders here. The first one that we actually have is insomnia. And I want to kind of focus on this one because a lot of you know what insomnia is. You have it. There are basically three types of insomnia. One type is where you can't fall asleep when you lay down at night. That's onset insomnia. A second type is where you do fall asleep, but you can't stay asleep. Maintenance insomnia. And then the third type is where you wake up way too early, which is, what is it called? Onset insomnia, maintenance insomnia, and the third one is termination insomnia. I keep thinking termination anxiety, termination insomnia. So those are the three types of insomnias where you don't get enough rest for the night. The question is what to do about them. Well, there are a number of different things, both behaviorally and non-behaviorally. Psychologists often talk about sleep hygiene things. And if you actually look down at the bottom of the list with professional groups, you can actually go to an organization called the American Sleep Association, see if you can find a couple of recommendations on sleep hygiene. These are more behaviorally based things. I guess my favorite idea for that one is the bedroom should really be used really for two major activities. One, of course, is sleep. The other, well, we conceived our baby Emily about 18 years ago, so I think you can figure out what option 2 is there. But eating in the bedroom, sleeping in the bedroom, you shouldn't be watching TV, and so they talk about these, I hope I made you laugh, by the way, there, sleep hygiene things. The other round that I wanted to talk about, though, because we are in physiological psychology, medications. There are a lot of medications people actually take in order to help them sleep. There's some downsides of that, aren't there? As many of you know, if you look down at the bottom of the outline here, the downside of taking sleep medications, many times you become dependent on that med that you need it to go to sleep. And then if you get off the med, your insomnia gets worse. Tolerance develops where you need more and more. And certainly if you're talking about alcohol as a product, it actually makes you sleep not quite the right way, as quite a few of these products actually do. So what are the products? Well, first, if you take something like Benadryl for allergies, antihistamines actually many times make people sedative, at least the original ones do. They seem to work by binding to histamine receptors in the hypothalamus. The second and third and actually fourth products here, alcohol, barbiturates, and benzodiazepines. I didn't put the outline quite right there, but benzodiazepines, in even newer generation, they're often called non-benzodiazepines, things like Lunesta, Ambien, and Sonata, actually all seem to work at a common receptor. And I think I made a picture of that receptor or copied it. They all seem to work at what's called the GABA receptor, called the GABA-A because there are different receptor subtypes for GABA. This receptor complex is very, very unique. If you look at it, GABA works when GABA normally binds as a neurotransmitter. A chloride channel is usually open, and chloride usually flows in and basically causes those IPSPs, inhibitory postsynaptic potentials, and basically reduces action potential. So it kind of has a calming effect as far as action potentials in the brain. And of course, behaviorally, that's how it works as well. So the question is, when you take something like, let's just go down the list here, alcohol. When people drink alcohol, alcohol binds, if you look at that picture, ETOH, to alcohol receptors on the GABA complex, and they basically open up the chloride channels even more. So you get a bigger chloride influx, and that's why many times people feel sleepy. It also tends to have an effect on anxiety. People get less anxious as well. So that's how alcohol works. If you take alcohol and barbiturates, things like phenobarbital, they used to be used a lot more. Barbiturates also bind to the same site. People like Marilyn Monroe, it's alleged that she was taking pills and alcohol. If those two interact on this receptor and you take too much, you can get so much chloride flowing in that a person will stop breathing because there are a lot of GABA receptors even in the medulla, which is in charge of breathing. So There can be drug interactions here, so alcohol and barbiturates. Now, instead of barbiturates, they tend to use benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines like Valium. They're much safer than the barbiturates, things like Valium. But once again, they also bind. If you look at the BZ sites, of course, BZ doesn't stand for bozo. BZ stands for benzodiazepines. And once again, when the benzos come into the brain, they bind on this GABA A site and they allowed more chloride to come in. So all three of these work at the same type of receptor site, which is one of the reasons why we get drug overdoses many times for these products. Even steroids work at this as well. The newer products, Lunesta, Ambien, and Sonata, are also kind of considered sedative. I think they're actually classified sedative hypnotic agents. They also work with these receptors, but not as strongly, and they're not actually classified as benzodiazepines, so they're a little safer. So these are some of the drugs that are used. The final group I actually put was kind of the alternative medicines. People do take melatonin, and melatonin can certainly work in the brain. The effects can depend on the type of product you're taking, and obviously individual differences. People also take tryptophan, which is converted into serotonin, but once again, does it really work or not is a good question. So you should be able to cover these and have some of the highlights here. Sleep hygiene. I also, well, I'll get down to that a little bit later. A couple of other disorders, just want to say a few words about them. Apnea, where people snore, they're not breathing and they snore. Many times they use something called the CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure. They put a device on the face and it basically allows better breathing to occur. Narcolepsy, where you have attacks of sleeping, well, they give people amphetamines because that'll keep that locus coeruleus activated and it'll keep the people awake. Finally, if you look on the outline here, I did want to let you know some of the professional groups that do a lot of this stuff. For consumers, the biggest group is called the National Sleep Foundation. A lot of consumer-based information there if you take a look. Two of the more medical psychiatric groups, the American Sleep Association, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. I told you to go to the American Sleep Association, find some sleep hygiene recommendations. If you look at the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, you can see some guidelines for what to do if you have insomnia. They do very much point out that cognitive behavioral approaches are good. They also give clinical guidelines for managing insomnia for healthcare professionals. So in summary then, I hope what you've learned with this kind of tour de force, if you will, is some of the key highlights as far as sleep is concerned. We don't get enough sleep. We are constantly stimulated in our society now, and certainly the effects of that are very dramatic when you look at people and see what they're doing and the multitasking they're doing, accidents on the road and so forth. So hopefully after going through this unit, you kind of understand a few more of the physiological psychology basics of what happens as far as circadian rhythms are concerned, what stages of sleep we go through. And obviously for people like me with a daughter with epilepsy, those stages of sleep are very important because when you have epilepsy, all that changes. Some of the key structures in the brain, some of the disorders involved here, and some of the professional groups. So I thank you for your attention, and that'll do it for sleep.